Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 120. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Good to be with you this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing? And let's not get thrown out like Joe Musgrove did yesterday. Let's keep this one the whole thing through.
Boy, what a weird sequence of events that was right there. I mean, for him to get tossed, and I think hurdle after him immediately. Yeah, that game got off to a kind of a real shaky start from a referee. Boy, the refereeing all the way around hockey and Major League Baseball, and then the goaltending call. I think last night, I don't know how much of that end of that game you saw last night. But, you just hate to see, especially in playoff games like that, the referees become such a story. And, obviously it goes back to last year during the playoffs in the NFL as well, too. But, interesting sequence of events there against the Braves yesterday. And, hey, how about it? It's mandatory minicamp starting today for the next 3 days. They'll pretty much be trying to simulate as best they can what practices at training camp, I guess, will be like. And, outside of the hitting, of course, the Steelers are expected to have a full attendance of people. Thus why it's termed mandatory mini camp. It'll be interesting to see if guys like David DeCastro, return. As best as I can tell, he missed, and I don't know for sure, but I never saw him in any of the photos on Steelers.com and all. And of course, we do know that he missed, I think, the first 2 weeks of OTAs due to the birth of his second child. So you'll be interesting to see if he's able to return for mandatory minicamp. You would think he would, but we'll see when it comes to him, and it'll be interesting to see how many players are maybe sit out. Now, obviously, the media can't report that, I don't think, unless the player, a player confirms it and all. So I don't know how much information we're going to get on that realm. But one good thing is the team, up until this point, knock on wood, has remained healthy. And after this week, we should be able to build us a small list, hopefully a small list, of players that may or may not start off training camp on the reserve PUP list. And, of course, last year, really, it was just the two. It was Eli Rogers and, of course, Ryan Shazier had long since been moved to the reserve PUP list. Now, I know they had a cut right there at the start of training camp last year. Who was it? Was it a corner or a wide receiver? I forget which one it was. And then also had a player placed on the
Ryan Harris?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was Bryce.
Bryce Harris.
Bryce Harris on the...
Well, because he failed the conditioning test. He got signed, and then they cut him shortly after, right?
Right, and they what do they call the illness list or something like that?
The NFI, non-football illness list.
Yeah, something like that. But officially only two, I think, on PUP on reserve PUP last year to start things off. So keep your fingers crossed. This obviously is going to be a real strenuous next 3 days, being as how they're burning the candle at both ends per se, and having some meetings mixed in between there, and as I mentioned, trying to simulate training camp as best as they possibly can. And I must know, today is the day that the offensive coaches are supposed to, whichever ones I guess agreed to, meet with the media, and then also Danny Smith. And we already have someone on Twitter wondering if you have your Danny Smith Forever shirt on this morning.
Loud and proud, Danny Smith forever. But yeah, this will be the last thing that happens. Steelers organized team activities, and this is obviously mandatory minicamp before training camp breaks. And this time tomorrow, we'll know what the training camp schedule is. That'll get released 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll know exactly what the dates are and the practices and all that good information. But yeah, this is the last dance before training camp. And Dave, as you know, once camp hits, everything's full speed ahead.
Absolutely. And I don't know, where do you want to start here?
Well, Well, let's look at the past real quick to start things off. Just a quick note: Arthur Moats announced his retirement. 4 years with the Steelers, 9 years in the NFL. Good Steeler, good dude, a fan favorite really across the board. So, not really a shock or a surprise by any means. He was basically out of the league last year. He was in Arizona briefly through camp. Got hurt right before the season started with an MCL injury. Got placed on IR. Released in October. Nothing happened after that. If you've been in the Pittsburgh area, follow Pittsburgh sports, you've probably seen him on the airwaves. I think he's done stuff for, I forget what station, 92.7 The Fan, or he's done some stuff with the Steelers website. So he's been pretty active on the broadcasting side of things. But Arthur Moats calls it a career, but I'm sure not the last time you'll hear from Arthur Moats.
Absolutely, what a good dude. Him and his wife, and what a great looking family they are, top to bottom there. So a lot of people don't realize Arthur Moats is the one that ended Brett Favre's consecutive game played streak back when he was a member of the Buffalo Bills as well too. So Moats was a good role player in Pittsburgh for those several seasons there. Played a lot on special teams during that span. And if there is one guy that you thought, man, can easily transition into major media, it's him. He already, I think, had been trying to work on some podcasts and whatnot, as you mentioned, doing some work for Steelers Nation Radio. Just a really enjoyable guy to hear speak, and you could see him going that path of maybe a Charlie Batch, and hopefully, Charlie Batch is another one. Boy, totally, what a great dude. And I've always wondered why Charlie Batch hasn't been picked up by NFL Network or one of these major media outlets, because he's so good with a microphone in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's something he doesn't want to do. I mean, he's very active in the community, so I'm not sure, but he'd be, great fit. So, yeah, good dude for Arthur Moats, good dude for Charlie Batch. So it's always, it's another reminder that 95% of the players in the NFL, not just in Pittsburgh, but the entire NFL, are really good guys that do things the right way. It's just unfortunate, understandable why he gets so much coverage, but unfortunate that the 5% that don't do the right things get all the headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. And, boy, I mean, for players to play as long as, not a large percentage of players play as long as he did in the NFL either, So,
yeah, especially from James Madison.
Right,
James Madison, it's just not a football powerhouse.
Absolutely, from James Madison at that. So, congratulations on a good career for him.
Absolutely. Dave, today, last show, we kind of really covered the receivers pretty heavily. Today, I think we're going to transition to the guys the receivers will be going after in camp, the secondary, cornerback, and safety talk. And we'll just start with Artie Burns, which has kind of become an interesting topic for us, and I think across Steelers Nation. I've seen it on Twitter the last couple weeks. But Burns, I don't think this is a surprise by any means, just because of the whole tenure thing and how practice works this point of year. Burns, with Joe Hayden not always working in OTAs, I believe that's just a health or being cautious and an age thing, the injured birth certificate, as Mike Tomlin might say. But Artie Burns getting some first-team work in OTA practices.
Yeah, I'm not, assuming that's on the left side, where Hayden normally plays, and Artie, of course, normally plays on the right side. It's probably a little bit of a surprise from that standpoint. But look, this team has to find out as much about Artie Burns as they can during this period. So this is something that Ray Fittipaldo put in his chat that Matthew Marksey picked up on and wrote about this morning. I mean, it's probably surprising some, but to me, I'm not overly surprised by it. More than anything, I'm just more concerned. Hey, is there something wrong with Joe Hayden, or is this a contusion of the birth certificate per se, or is it all the above? And it very well could be that. And a lot of the talk for quite a while now has been about Artie Burns and the $800,000 roster bonus due at the start of training camp, and will the Steelers ultimately cut him? I still firmly plant my feet on the side, Alex, that they're not going to do anything with Artie Burns. That to me, and if they were, I mean, is 3 more practices really going to make a difference and sway your decision as far as assuming Artie Burns is that close to, the edge, so to speak? Is 3 more practices during mandatory minicamp going to be enough to be a deciding factor with him? I guess my point being is, if there's ever a chance for a guy can get hurt, walking out to the field. And obviously OTAs, people have suffered season-ending injuries during OTAs. You go back to a year ago with the two players in Hawkins and Jake McGee suffered season-ending injuries. It happens. But to me, when you get into a setting, mandatory minicamp, we have double the practice and all, to me the risk goes up even more. Why would you? If he was that close to the edge, I mean, surely they know who he is and he isn't by now, and they don't just need 3 more practices to make a decision on him.
Yeah, I don't think there's 3 more practices. Yeah, you caught me right on the track.
What a way to come in.
Yeah, coming in hot at you, Dave. No, I don't think you need 3 more practices to do it. I just think if you have the luxury of time to keep a guy, then you keep the guy as long as you're able to do so, because you could play it the other way. What if someone else gets hurt? God forbid, Steven Nelson, Joe Hayden, one of your starters go down with a potential season-ending injury, then maybe the conversation about Artie Burns changes. So I think it would be weigh the risk of the chances of him getting hurt, which is possible. I mean, I understand that, versus the chances of anybody else getting hurt and how that dynamic could change. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to pretend like I know, and nothing is going to shock me if they keep him, if they cut him. I'm going to have probably generally the same reaction. My thought is just, I don't think Burns is making the team. So if I was Colbert, I'm not paying that money because I don't believe he's going to make the team. I'm not paying $800,000 to a guy I think is outside looking in. And B, at the very least, why don't ask him to push that bonus back? I know we've had this conversation before. I know that you're going to say, well, Burns is just going to say, no, cut me. But I don't know how that helps Artie Burns, because him picking up a new playbook right before camp, probably not going to be good for him, trying to find a new team and a system and get settled in right away. And I mean, they asked Boswell to push it back. That worked. They even asked AB to push it back, of all people. They asked Antonio Brown to push the roster bonus back. So why would you not even attempt to do the same with Artie Burns?
I mean, you know where I stand on this. If I'm Artie Burns and if I think they're that dissatisfied with me, I mean, I've already lost my starting job. Maybe I need a change of scenery here,
But you're going to do that right before camp? Is that going to be healthy? Because no offense to Burns, picking up schemes has not been his strongest attribute.
Sure, but I mean, I still think even if Artie Burns was cut right before training camp, and surely the Steelers wouldn't wait until the day before training camp, right?
If I want to push some leverage, I might do that. I might wait out. If I have the luxury of time and someone else gets hurt, I'm going to tell them, we're going to cut your, right before camp, unless you push that bonus back.
Yeah,
the best thing for you right now is to push that bonus back.
Yeah, I'm not sure the Steelers would take that hard of a line with him from a leverage standpoint. And I think even if Burns were to be cut, I don't think he would. I could see a team out there giving him maybe something with some game day roster incentives or something that would at least give him an opportunity to earn, like, let's say $1.5 million.
Yeah, it's not a matter of he would get signed if the Steelers cut him. He'd get another chance, first round pick. Someone's going to give him a look, but is he going to be able to make the team? If he's really late in this process and trying to pick things up on the fly, get used to a new team, new scheme, new coaching, I don't think that's going to be his best way to make a team. I think his best chance of making any roster would be to do it in Pittsburgh. And if that means pushing that roster bonus back, betting on yourself, that's the best approach for him to take.
All right, well, I still stand in the camp that they're not going to do anything with him.
All right. I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to pretend like they're definitely going to cut him. But if it was me, I'm not doing it. And how do we even get to this point in the first place? How did he get an $800,000 roster bonus for training camp? Had that worked in his rookie contract? Did they redo something with his deal? Is that common?
No, I mean, I think that was initially set in his rookie contract. I think it's been there for a while.
And does Devin Bush have that? Is that a common thing with first-round picks, or one of those just negotiating things?
I think it's just one of those. I just think it's one of those negotiating things. I mean, okay. I don't think. No, look, Devin Bush, his is fully guaranteed.
Well, yeah.
But
sure.
Where Artie Burns was taken, I think you've got some of that negotiation leverage there in some stuff.
Well, I don't know what agent did that for Burns, but maybe not the best. I guess you couldn't envision Burns being in this spot whenever he was initially drafted. But I mean, I guess ultimately, Dave.
I mean, look at this. And we talked a little bit about this recently too, going over the list. I mean, they have not outright cut a first round draft pick of theirs. without them seeing, in other words, only one past first-round draft pick has not made it all the way through their rookie contract because of a release. Now, obviously, they've traded, some away and all we talked about, but Jermaine Stevens, I mean, he had he passed that conditioning test, who knows? But I mean, he was already kind of on the outs as it was anyway, and him failing that conditioning test, what was it, 1999, I think. The Cowards said to heck with him and just cut him outright. But we have not seen the Steelers. To me, they're just not a team that's going to give up that easily just yet. Now, obviously, if Artie has the, not a good attitude throughout this whole process, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen him talk to the media through the OTA sessions, right?
Right.
He might be thumbing his nose at that, and that's obviously not going to be a good look there. Look, Boswell. As much as Boswell hated to meet the media, he went out and took a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down a little bit there. And why couldn't Artie Burns do the same? Will Artie talk to the media this week? We'll see. It would have to be pretty bad, I think, for them to cut Artie Burns. Now, once again, like you said, I'm not gonna clutch my pearls if he's cut prior to the start of training camp. It's just where I am right now. I mean, I just don't see it happening.
What are the odds of Burns making this roster? Week 1, Foxborough. Not even active, but just making the 53. What a percentage on it?
I still think it's 75% or greater, Alex.
So and you believe they're going to keep 6 then, and he's the 6th?
I mean, you could play with the numbers, but
play with the numbers.
I think it's 6. I think you keep 6 cornerbacks.
And Burns is your 6, or someone else your 6? If you had to list them in terms of like numbers of conflict, like Steven Nelson 100%, Joe Hayden 100%. We
think
Sutton,
Hilton.
I don't know, 90.
We think Hilton obviously going to be there. That's 3.
95%.
You would think Cam Sutton's not going to wash out this quick, so that's 4 right there, right?
Well, what are the odds Cam Sutton makes the roster? Justin Lane 100%, Hilton basically 100%. What are Cam Sutton's odds of making?
I would think 80% or better.
Okay, yeah, I might go a little bit higher, but yeah, point taken.
Now,
that's your 5.
So is Brian Allen? Is it down to Brian Allen and Burns
versus the field versus Alexander Myers and Herb Waters and the outside guys? It's hard. You're saying that Burns is the number 6 corner, and it's hard for me to put 75% on a number 6 guy making the 53. It's possible, but to put 75% on a guy to be the last man in the cornerback room with all the other factors he's got to deal with externally and internally, I think 75% is too confident.
Yeah, but we're talking about two separate things here. Right? We're talking about whether or not he's going to make it to training camp, and then we're talking about whether or not.
No, I'm talking about the roster. Yeah, I'm going to use that to get to training camp in a second, but I wanted to get your opinion on him making the roster.
I mean, I'm not going to be shocked if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, but
you have pretty high odds that he's going to make it.
I have his odds higher than probably most. And right. Look, I've said this. I mean, look, from the moment he was taken, I didn't like the pick. But, I mean, they have him, and here he is, and he's played, and, I guess it comes down to can they fix him,
I mean, Terrell Lawson's going to have to be the cornerback whisperer because nothing they've done so far has worked. It's gotten worse, actually.
I mean, you go back and look at some of the big plays that he gave up last year. Whew.
Not hard to find.
Keith Butler talked about, a few weeks ago about the plays over the head that they gave up, and I think it was something like 21 completions of a ball being thrown 20 or more yards down the field. Completed, and I think Artie Burns was responsible for 3 or 4 of those in there. So, I mean, and for a guy that only played, he played through the Bengals game in what week was that, 6?
Yeah, basically about half the season. Look at his snaps late in the year.
And then,
start of the year.
Then he obviously was sat down for quite a while. Then they tried to get him back on that field late in the game against the Carolina Panthers, I think, and I think he blew an assignment in that game as well, too, and then pretty much we never heard from him again.
Well, that was the Patriots game. Remember, that all started it, gave up the touchdown, Tomlin took him out, didn't blame him, but took him out, and that whole thing.
Right.
75% is just too high. I mean, I would put it at like 33% for a number 6 corner to make it. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I think he's outside looking in, and I'm just not paying $800K for a guy with 33% chance of making my roster.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of time in between now and start of training camp and then the end of training camp, obviously. So, my focus right now is more of will they bring him to camp,
Yeah, sure. And that's up in the air. Just with Burns, I mean, the fact that it's gotten worse is just the craziest thing. I mean, this guy's made some of the worst plays, both in run defense and coverage, I've ever seen from a quarterback. Last year, the touchdown he allowed to Tyler Boyd, I mean, that was just one of the worst just breakdowns I've seen from a cornerback. I mean, he just let Boyd run his route, didn't disrupt it at all, gave up the touchdown. I mean, you remember that one. And then the Bears game in 2017 in OT, where he tried to it was a crack replace situation where the safety got cracked, corners got to come in and support the run, and Burns just fell down. I mean, the dude just fell to the ground and gave up a huge run to, I think, Tariq Cohen down the left sideline. So, I mean, some of the worst plays I've ever seen by a cornerback have come from Artie Burns.
Right, and the whole crack and replace thing, he's never been great at that.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Bears game is that example there. But, yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel for the guy. He's been through a lot. I'm sure it's not fun to hear the criticism that you get, on a weekly basis during the season and all those external factors. And, I don't know what's going on in his personal life. I want these guys to succeed. I want everyone to do well. I just haven't seen it with him. And at some point, you got to cut bait. You can't hold on to those guys forever. I mean, clearly this team is already in the process of moving on. You don't sign Steven Nelson, draft Justin Lane, do all the things that you're doing in the secondary if you felt like Artie Burns is going to turn the corner. I mean, it's if you get it, great, but don't count on it situation.
Well, one thing for sure, we get to hear, or at least we think we get to hear from either or Terrell Austin and Tom
Bradley.
Yeah, Tom Bradley. Maybe that we'll see. If it's both that we get to hear from, or just one of them that we get to hear from this week. But you can. I would hope there's a good line of questioning for one or both those guys when it comes to Artie Burns.
And that's a good segue because, I want to talk about briefly today kind of that dynamic between Austin and Bradley. By the way, I have an article on Steelers Depot this morning. Terrell Austin did a clinic back in 2016. He went to Michigan for a football clinic with the Harbaughs and some other coaches and kind of just talked about his overall coaching philosophy. He doesn't get into the X's and O's, but just his overall thought process. So some interesting nuggets about him. But it's just been really curious to watch, Dave. We saw Austin brought on as a kind of defensive assistant. He said he's going to help Tomlin on game day. He's going to be up in the booth, helping with replays and challenges. But it kind of sort of feels like he's running the room, like he's just become the de facto defensive backs coach. And he was with Kevin Colbert during the pro day circuit and was out there talking with Justin Lane after he was drafted. Austin was at Lane's pro day. Bradley wasn't, we believe. And then I think Jacob Klinger has talked about to some of these players and said that Bradley and Austin basically split the meetings and are kind of trading off cornerbacks and safety. So obviously Austin has a really heavy influence in this group, and I know they kind of tried to play it off initially. The team did as more of a reserve role and the assistant, but it just kind of feels like Austin's been almost the guy and Bradley's playing second fiddle.
Yeah, it seemed that it has seemed that way for a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if I bet Mike Tomlin's leaning on him quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you, hired him for a reason, local guy, ton of experience. But, I mean, again, that was a good hire because you have Bradley coming in who has the college experience, kind of knows how to handle the younger players a little bit better, with Austin with all the NFL experience, defensive coordinator, seeing the big picture. I mean, so you have both those things, which is good. I guess my only concern with this group is that because I'm all for more voices and different perspectives, but just making sure there is a clear leader in that room. The guy that they go to is Tom Bradley, or the guy that these players go to is Terrell Austin, not this, who's in charge situation. That may create some issues. So that'd be my one concern there. But, Austin's certainly been someone, like you said, I think they're going to lean on pretty heavily.
Well, I was a little bit surprised by the Bradley hire.
Yeah, just to get a college lifer. But I guess it makes more sense in hindsight because they've been hiring a lot of college coaches lately with Clem and Faulkner and guys like that.
Well, once again, it'd be interesting to see, which one of them talks. If maybe both of them will talk to the media this week, but whichever one talks to the media, I definitely hope they're asked about Artie Burns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that they will be. But, anything else with Burns you want to add, or you
No,
move
I
on
mean,
after
look,
the
we've
secondary?
covered it now. It's just it's a wait and see with him. What are the reports going to be from mandatory minicamp this week? And as you've stated in the past, Artie seems to function well during training camp. It's just when the lights
Mm-hmm.
come on that is where the problem starts.
Yeah, a little bit of fool's gold where you sit there and say, camp, he's turned the corner, he's figured things out, and then everything starts to count, and it goes south. And that's why, again, you bring him to camp. I mean, he's going to have a decent practice session. He's going to be fine. But, are you going to trust him enough to ever put him on the field? And at this point, with everything else you've added, probably not. But, again, we'll kind of table that conversation, and we'll get our answer in 6 weeks. Is that what it is? 6 weeks. So, we'll find out pretty quickly. Dave, anyone else in the secondary you want to jump to next? Dangerfield, you talked about him, I think, yesterday on the site. Finally getting some respect.
Yeah, I mean, look, it used to be cute to write up an article about Jordan Dangerfield and somewhere in there, make the Rodney Dangerfield, no respect line. But I mean, he's made the 53-man roster technically the last couple of years. Obviously, one he had that ankle injury there and had to be waived injured. But this is a guy that's been around long enough. I think those jokes related to him not getting respect are over with now at this point. And when you look at the safety depth chart top to bottom, is he in the driver's seat for a roster spot again this year? I mean, assume, how many are they going to keep? They're going to keep 4. They're going to keep 5. Who's behind them? This is a guy that played in week 17 when Sean Davis missed that game. He started in his place, and not only did he play every snap in that game on defense, he was tied for the team high in special team snaps in that game as well too. He's always been a fine special teams player. Where is he? Where are you? And where is he right now in all of this?
I'm where I was at before we had this conversation. That I think Dangerfield has a good chance to make the roster. Certainly, at the very least, the inside track to make it. Because if you want to rank these guys, you got Sean Davis, Terrell Edmonds, Marcus Allen. There's 3. You're keeping at least 4, and right now Dangerfield is that number 4. And I know we kind of talked about Cameron Kelly and kind of had some intrigue there that he got some reps. But I mean, Dangerfield, by reports, has still gotten first team reps, and it's felt like first man up when Sean Davis missed during spring practices. So I believe that Kelly either got rotated in or picked up those reps when Dangerfield was out of practice when he was graduating from Townsend. So that might be why Kelly got those first-team reps. I mean, Kelly's still an interesting guy. Don't discount him, but Dangerfield is still the backup right now, and he always has him. Go back to 2016 against the Chiefs. He got to start in that game, played heavily, and actually played pretty well. So he's a guy that's a good special teamer, hard-nosed, aggressive guy, sets the tempo type of player. You like that kind of mindset and mentality. He's also the up back on the punt team, which I know they've rotated guys, they've changed guys out, but that's also an important role. He's a good special teams player overall. So, and I still firmly believe that, again, I'm not going to call him a lock, but I think that he has that 75-80% chance of making the roster again.
You would think Danny Smith, that's a guy that Danny Smith's going to go to bat for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the quarterback of the punt team. He can be a four-face guy. He can be a high-energy, high-tempo kind of player. And again, he's just your backup free safety. I mean, Sean Davis goes down, who you replacing him with? It's the only guy on this roster with NFL experience at free safety besides Sean Davis is Jordan Dangerfield.
Right, and you would think, I mean, look, I know Cameron Kelly's been kind of the flavor of the last 3 weeks, so to speak, I guess, at the safety position and all because of him getting some of the first team reps there. But let's not forget that this was a guy that had to sign initially as a wide receiver with the San Diego Fleet, and then if not for injury, he got. Look, this is a guy that's listed as a DB and not a safety and a cornerback for a reason, because he can give you, some multi position looks there. But end all do all is he was very much on the outside looking in until the AAF got started there, and then now here he is. So he's still got to be considered, especially when compared to a guy like Jordan Dangerfield, a guy, at least behind Dangerfield at this point. And then, you look at a few of the other, top to bottom, you want to talk about a position that could have the most movement right away due to injury some sort of injury there, it's definitely safety. I mean, Drayvon Askew Henry out of West Virginia, undrafted free agent, guy really haven't heard too terribly much about, I don't think, since this whole process has started. And the same goes for PJ Locke, who heavy hitter. Not more probably of the lines of tackling as Sean Davis misses his share of tackles, but a guy that's intriguing nonetheless. But outside of PJ Locke and Drayvon Askew Henry, what do you have on that depth chart there?
Yeah, you got Kelly, you got Marcellus Branch. He's probably going to play free safety, I believe, for Pittsburgh. Askew Henry and Locke will be strong safeties alongside Marcus Allen, so just to kind of divide that group up, so they can push for Rosh's spot, but they're not going to necessarily push for Dangerfield's spot because they're going to be free versus strong safety, so different positions there. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know who else your backup free safety would be. Now, Dangerfield is far from your ideal free safety. It's kind of sums up the state of the depth chart when he's your backup, because he profiles as a strong safety, as a box type player, and that's kind of where he works best. He functions best, but that's the hand that's been dealt right now, and I think that's what they're going to roll with. They like Dangerfield. They like his experience. I mean, he's played relatively well when given the chance, and the guy can just tackle. Just give me guys who can tackle in the secondary as a backup, and you live with it.
And obviously, whichever guy, I mean, right now, I think we're both in the camp where Jordan Dangerfield's going to be number 3 or number 4, right?
Yeah, it should be number 4. I mean, if you had to list them in terms of who's most likely to make the roster, Davis, Edmonds, Marcus Allen, and then Dangerfield, but he'll be number 2 on the free safety depth chart, and that's the most important thing for him, is that he's the immediate backup, and unless someone else proves it, which, hey, maybe it happens, but until that does happen, or they go external options, again, we've identified safety and tight end as being maybe the 2 positions this team could add to, wouldn't mind that. But Dangerfield's your dude.
And if you do go safety on the outside right now, you would think something along those lines would happen fairly quickly. And on top of it, you would think it'd be an under 30 guy, guy that obviously you could get on the very, very cheap, and one that would be a special teams demon on top of it.
Yeah, I would envision it in terms of a trade. One of Colbert's kind of now famous and regular annual training camp trades. I'm not thinking it's going to be a street guy. I think it's someone in a camp who's conditioned, ready to go, ready to jump in right away, try to hop on that moving train. I have not even looked at any names of those yet, so don't ask me, but that's where it could come from.
Where do you come in on Brian? Speaking of secondary, Brian Allen is a guy I wanted to kind of, talk a little bit about today, because really we haven't heard a whole lot about Brian Allen.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's kind of the forgotten man. The ship has sort of sailed. The intrigue of him being this 6'1" corner who can run and hit, and that was kind of the thought taking him out of Utah. Really, it didn't happen. Just hasn't worked out. Last year was kind of a down preseason for him. Some of his technique wasn't where it needed to be, and just struggled to get a hat last year. So was he on the practice squad at the beginning of the year, right? And then got called up. Did that happen with Brian Allen?
Did that happen?
Did he make the 53? Did he make the 53
I'll have to
out?
look at the transactions there.
I thought he started the year on the practice squad, then he got called up, but maybe I'm misremembering that. But either way, I mean, yeah, he's going to be that just kind of conventional, traditional, you better help out on special teams, because, again, they've added so many pieces in the secondary. Allen's not going to have a real shot for any sort of significant playing time during the year. Obviously, he'll play during the preseason, but he's going to do his thing on special teams and try to, just claim that number 6 spot.
Yeah, Brian Allen was terminated there at the start during the final round of cuts, and then got promoted to the 53-man roster from the practice squad on 10-2 after Nat Burry went down. Okay, boy, Nat Burry, will he be a name that's ever...
He's going to be in my Let's Remember Some Steelers series 5 years from now.
Holy moly. The thing was, he was going, ahead of him being signed. I wasn't overly excited about him from either a safety or a free safety standpoint, but he was a good special teamer during his time with the Giants. But we learned real quick in the game, what was it, against Baltimore?
Tampa.
Yeah. When put into that kind of that quasi dime role. Oh.
Yeah. Not to be fair, I mean, really, could you really expect him to have success there? A position he really hasn't played, and with that skill set, I mean, I'm not surprised that he struggled. If he would have just been a special teamer, I think people would have been like, yeah, that was a fine signing. That was cool.
Right, and that's kind of when you sign him, you hope that was all you're going to have to do with him. But the Morgan, it ended up being a snowball effect with Morgan Burnett and everything along with that.
Yeah, and that's why that dime roll is so key with Marcus Allen this year. I mean, do you expect Marcus Allen to be the dime backer out of the gate?
Yeah, I mean, like we've seen to hit on this every 4 shows, I guess. It's just, ask me once training camp gets started.
No, well, I mean, here's the interesting thing is that we might not know right away because they did not run dime. They barely, I mean, they ran a little sub package last year, but it was pretty far and few between. They did some 7 DB stuff, some dollar stuff that was interesting in camp, but generally in camp they're playing base and nickel. They're not doing a whole lot of dime, and even in the preseason you don't see a lot of it. So it might be harder for us. I mean, we'll probably know a little bit more, but we might not really get that definitive answer if they don't do it a lot in camp because they did not do it a lot last year.
What happens if Bush is ready to start the season? How much does that change the dynamic? Let's say it's Bush and Williams in there starting the season.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I don't think it changes the dynamic.
Does Barron pick up maybe? I mean, look, Barron can do a lot of the same kind of stuff.
He's really been just a linebacker though. If you look at some of the things they do with that dime position, the safety group inverting, moving those guys in coverage, playing them out in space, it's not been what Mark Barron's good at. That's not what he's done the last couple of years.
Are you saying where you're at right now, you'd rather have Allen in there than Barron?
Oh yeah, and I think that's where they're going to go. I mean, when Tomlin was asked about sub package football, the first name he mentioned was Marcus Allen, not Mark Barron. I mean, look at the things they do with the safety position. The way they invert coverages, you'll have Burnett. The last time, a couple times, they had him down the box, and then right on the snap, he went to the deep half, and the other safety rotated down to give that different look. I mean, that's stuff that Mark Barron's not going to do. Barron struggled in coverage. I like it. I like the Barron signing, but the more I learned about him, I realized this is a MAC linebacker, not a dime backer, not someone that's going to play that safety role. So you look at the things that a dime player has to do with his coverage and some of his disguises and stuff like that. That's not things that Mark Barron's has been asked to do, and that's something he's really capable of doing.
Well, I mean, Marcus Allen, we've yet to see him really do that in the NFL level too,
No, but he's a safety. He's been a safety. I mean, I know Barron was a former safety, but it's been a long time since he's been in that spot. He's gained weight. He's played the linebacker role. So, I mean, Allen is the guy that in practice is going to go through the coverage drills, going against receivers, going against tight ends, stuff like that. I mean, Barron will do some stuff against tight ends, but he struggled against them. I mean, the skill set just isn't there. He's just, it's like asking Devin Bush to be or Vince Williams to be that dime backer, to be that literal dime backer role. I mean, they're not going to succeed in that spot.
Well, that's definitely one of the things that'll be high on your list to monitor once training camp gets open.
It will, but again, they did not. I don't think they ran much dime last year. They really just kind of kept it with some of the basic stuff. So, hopefully we find it. I mean, sometimes in the specialty sessions when they go third down, they'll have a team drill where it's all third down packages. I mean, maybe you'll see some of that, but that might be a little bit of coy about how they're going to unveil this depth chart.
All right. One of the many things to look forward to with training camp.
Mm-hmm. Any sleepers? Anyone else? Under the radar guys you're keeping an eye on? Anyone you've learned about?
You mean in secondary or what?
Yeah, secondary. Yep.
Yeah, I mean just the high dollar cornerback that they signed during undrafted free agency. Alexander Myers is a guy that kind of intriguing, a guy that I've still yet to find a large selection of film on because of him, playing at Houston and all. So that's a guy that I want to learn a little bit more about. And then, of course, I think you did a write-up on Herb Waters after he was signed as well, kind of a lengthy guy. That should be an intriguing guy. Which guy would you think right now would probably have the inside track at maybe a practice squad spot?
I mean, I guess the easy one is Waters because he's more experienced. He was on the practice squad last year, but it could go either way. Myers is interesting because he's a really strong special teams player, and we know that's kind of the path for any of those 50 to 53 guys on the roster to make it is 3 special teams, and he's got experience there, so I could see him doing a good job on the coverage units as a gunner, as a kick coverage kind of guy. But Waters is probably the better chance of making an impact somewhere as a cornerback because I think he's got the speed, the size, he's got ball skills, former receiver. Packers turned him into a cornerback, and that's where Pittsburgh signed him. So I think they're probably 2 different type of guys where I see Myers as a special teams player, and Waters obviously has to do that too, but I could see higher ceiling for him as an actual bona fide cornerback.
And obviously it'll be interesting to watch the progression and how quickly Steven Nelson's able to fit into this defense and all. And look with the Steelers expected to play more man. He should fit in comfortably there. However, when and one of the arguments and hand wringing that you probably will get from fans at this time or continued on from the moment they signed him is why they pay a guy that much money when Kansas City wasn't willing to resign him and all. And make no mistake about it, he was the highest targeted cornerback in the league last year. I went back and looked at throws of over your head 20 yards down the field last year. I think he allowed 11 such throws last season, and that was just regular season. And I think he gave up, it was either one or two in the playoffs. I know he gave up the one to New England, right? In that playoff game there as well too. So Steven Nelson is a guy that you know why they signed him. They liked him. They had liked him going back to that draft and all. But his ability to be able to come in right away and function at a seemingly high level is going to be extremely important to this defense, because you obviously got a lockdown guy on the other side, and Joe Hayden. You would think Hilton's going to be your guy in the slot to start things off there. Can Nelson? I mean, if I'm the Patriots week 1, guess who I'm going after?
Mr. Steven Nelson.
And he's going to be a highly targeted guy right out of the chute, and he should be. If I'm opposing an opposing offensive coordinator, I'm going right after Steven Nelson, just like every team in the NFL did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I saw those numbers too. I mean, I think that there's a lot of context that has to be associated with that. I mean, the Chiefs were probably I think they were thrown on the most of any defense last year.
Sure, because they had some leads,
running the score up. Yeah, I mean, that naturally just kind of kicks up the numbers. But yeah, I profiled Nelson this way coming out. He's kind of been a feast or famine guy. The guy can make plays. He's got good ball skills. He supports to run hard. He's versatile, slot, outside corner capability, but he's given up the big play too. I mean, he's certainly not the fastest dude, and he'll take some chances and be a gambler, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So he's going to be a guy that you brought in to make big plays, but you recognize in the process, in the pursuit of making big plays, occasionally you give some up to.
Boy, if they ended up getting him a fine in Steven Nelson, at least a guy that can give you. And look, Cody Sensabaugh didn't play bad, and you hate to characterize the guy. Well, he didn't play bad. That means he didn't probably play good. A lot of times though as well too. But Sensabaugh didn't give up a lot of downfield plays.
Yeah, he didn't make plays though. That was the thing. Sensabaugh,
right.
He just was playing deep, playing off, letting the throw come underneath, and that was fine. But you need more than that if you really want to go somewhere as a defense.
And you would think as many times as Steven Nelson was thrown at, he would at least have a couple interceptions last year.
Yeah, true.
Which he did, 4 in total, first 4 of his career. So, look, make no mistake about it. I'll say this every time you ask me how this Steelers 2019 season goes is going to be dependent on how good their defense plays.
And specifically to me, how many takeaways they create.
Right.
That's the number for me. I mean, because again, this defense is improved. It'll be better than last year. I'm pretty confident in that. But offenses are going to move the football. They're not so good that teams are going to be just stuck. And it's going to be about playing good red zone defense and creating some takeaways and giving the offense the ball back with a short field, as we've talked about time and time again. All right, David, I think that wraps up the secondary pretty good. Let's jump to the outside linebackers briefly. Just want to talk about Bud Dupree for a second because, again, another one of those, like Artie Burns, to a similar degree at least, pretty hot topic, I think, in Steelers Nation the last couple of days. I wrote the article yesterday, which I kind of figured would get some criticism, which is fine and fair. But, I said this is why I think Bud Dupree might have his best season ever. Now, by no means am I expecting that. By no means am I saying he's going to have a breakout year that's going to get him 14 sacks. I go into this year with no expectations. Here's the one thing that I'm hoping for from Bud Dupree, and I mentioned this on the podcast already, so I'm sorry for repeating myself, but since I wrote the article, we'll touch on it again, is that Dupree has been hurt the last 3 years. You have his rookie year. He got through, I think, pretty healthy, but of course it's his rookie year. It was a raw linebacker from Kentucky. It was obviously hard to judge. His second year, he gets with the groin injury. He misses the first half of the season, comes back, plays in 7 games. Hard to judge. 2017, he suffers some sort of arm injury that really limited him for a good chunk of the season, definitely the start of the year, where at one point he had to take painkillers because he couldn't lift his arm like above his shoulder. And then last year, obviously, he played with a torn pec to finish out the year. So he's always had some injury. I don't consider him injury prone. I've just considered him very, very unlucky so far. So if, and I know it's an if, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's hope it happens. If Dupree gets to a 16-game season healthy, I'm not saying he's going to have a great year, but I'm saying we'll have the best evaluation of who he is as a player because we know that there's been no health factors that have limited him. And we'll see if he can really rush the passer and improve, or if he's just the guy that he's been, which is just a middling, underwhelming first-round pick. So that's the hope with Pittsburgh. I think that's why they kept him around, because they're just saying if he can just get through a season healthy, we'll find out what we have in this guy, and what we think we have in this guy is something more than what he's been. And that's my thought process with Bud Dupree.
All right, and he, we've covered this as well, too, him talking about, well, I should have had more sacks. And, when you're dealing with a fan base that's already sour on you, the last thing they want to hear is is excuses and all. But, trying to be as objective as I can be with some of these guys, I took what Bud said. He even outlined, I think, in one of these interviews, talking about how he was denied 6 sacks last season, being prevented by holding calls or pass rush initiated, and had a few misses. He even said and noted misses in games against Carolina Panthers and the Cincinnati Bengals. So what I did, since our last show, is I went back and I tried to find all these instances where Bud Dupree, quote unquote, missed a sack. And look, he did have, how many was there, the holding calls here? 1, 2,
4.
Well, he noted 4. I only found 3 of them, I think, where, look, it's hard to argue. And look, these things are very subjective when you go through it, because you're a lot of if, then, when, type situations here. But you start off with with that safety against the Cleveland Browns in, what was it, week 8. I think without a doubt Bud Dupree gets a sack there. And a safety if he's not held by Harrison in that instance, because he's already in the backfield there. I think he gets that one. The one against the Ravens a week later, he's held, and I don't think Flacco senses him at all. I think Bud gets a clean hit on Flacco if he's not held there. And then in the game against Denver later on in the season, another hold. Probably that one's a little bit more, I don't know, could Case Keenum got away from him regardless? It's possible there, but it's easy to pick out those instances, 3 of the 4 at least. I have yet to find the 4th one that Bud's talking about, a hold or something that prevented him from getting a sack. Now, he did have in the game against the Panthers one where, Cam Newton ducked him, that probably should have been a sack, but how many times has Cam Newton ducked?
Yeah, that's what he does.
That's what he is. He's been Roethlisberger-like in that, he's a hard quarterback to bring down and all. But Bud did get a hand on him, and I could see where Bud thinks that he probably should have had a sack on that play. Now, the other one, and you and I kind of fished around in was it the finale? I think it was a finale against the Bengals there, with and we kind of narrowed it down to, I think, a possible 2 or 3 plays in which maybe Bud felt like he should have had a sack. And this one's this one's sketchy here. If I'm going to give the maybe sack to anybody on this play, and it's one where Driscoll's forced from the pocket. In fact, Bud really has more of a contain role at the start of this play. Doesn't even rush the quarterback until after Driscoll's flushed to his side. Cam Sutton coming off that other edge is what forces the flush. And if I'm going to give a maybe sack to anybody, it's probably Cam Sutton on that one.
Yeah, I understand what Dupree's saying. There were certainly plays where he could have had better production. I even posted a play in my post yesterday on Stephon Tuitt. This is the best play, worst play for Tuitt's worst play. It's one where he lost contain. Had they contained that one, Dupree probably gets a sack. Now, he's probably not referring to that one in those plays you talked about, but those things happen. But those things happen to everybody. So if you count Dupree's near misses, then you got to count everybody else's near misses. You got to count Von Miller's near misses, Khalil Mack's non-misses or near misses. So if you do that with everybody, the numbers probably come out the same.
Sure. And one exercise I decided to do on top of it, I've made it through the what game have I made it through? The Buccaneers game, I think. Going back and looking at the potential, and look, you want to talk about subjective. I mean, trying to figure out possible missed sacks, is tough to do. But I mean, some stick out more than others, obviously. A few of these, like Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt, got their hands on the quarterback in the backfield and he slips away to scramble for, positive yardage there. A few of those I've included in here as well, too. So, yeah, you go around the league, everybody had the woulda, coulda, shouldas,
Yep.
So, enough with every – and I don't know if all this is stemming from – 2 or 3 interviews with Bud Dupree, but it seems like it's been more than one interview where Bud's pointing to, I could have had more sacks. Doing that once, okay, but doing it 3 or 4 times, yeah, we get it,
Right, for a fan base that isn't the biggest fan of you right now, not going to change anyone's mind at this point.
Now, look, is he a guy, like I said, if he gets 8.5 sacks along with, an increase of pressures and hits or whatnot, that's streaking material right there,
Yeah.
Now, if he hits double digits for whatever reason, I mean, I'm sure we're going to be looking at the overall quality of the sacks, but, sacks are sacks. I mean, you don't, they still count. So, I mean, if he was to somehow hit 10, whew, I mean, regardless, the Steelers aren't going. I mean, the odds of the Steelers placing the franchise tag on him, regardless of what happens in 2019, are slim, very, very slim. So, if you're a fan of the Steelers, you're obviously hoping that Bud Dupree has a career year, as he's claimed that he thinks he will, and then he rides off into the sunset on a nice contract to another team.
His biggest issue has obviously been speed to power and threatening inside moves and being able to win with a bull rush, and that's 100% true. But I do think with some of the arm issues that he's had, it's hard to show power with a torn pec. It's hard to show power when you can barely lift your arm, as he went through 2017. So again, if he can just stay healthy, and not a guarantee, but hopefully, I think it's just been some bad luck associated with him. But if he's able to do that, then we'll find out. Is he a guy that can create power, or is he a guy that just relies on the speed rush too much? And I don't know if we quite know that answer yet. And that's just what I want to see out of Dupree, is a healthy season to really get kind of the fullest, best evaluation of his game, good or bad.
As I've said with him too, he just no counters. It just doesn't seem like he has a plan.
But I think the injuries have hindered that. I think it's hard to win inside when you have a torn pec. I think that's why he's relied on the speed move so much.
And he sure does rely on it. He'd much rather try to run around the edge.
And to his credit, I think he's played the run okay. I think he's a good effort player, and I think he's a really tough dude. To play through the injuries he's played through and barely not only missed a couple practices and only one game the last 2 years. I mean, my hat's off to Dupree for that, at least. You can hate on Dupree for a lot of things, and I get it. Again, I was not in favor of picking up the $9.2 million fifth-year option. I'm not totally opposed to that. I think it was the wrong decision, but he's a tough dude that plays hurt and gives it his all.
And, I mean, we should expect at least 6.5 sacks.
He's been pretty good, yeah. Was it 5.5 last year, 6 the year before? Yeah, and at least there's other pass rushers on this team. At least you have a T.J. Watt that has shown he can get double digits, and Hayward can get double digits, and But if you want 2 guys to step up as pass rushers, it's Bud Dupree and Stephon Tuitt. If they can both hit 7.5 sacks this year, I mean that's a huge thing for this defense.
All right. They're probably tired. They're probably tired of us talking about Bud Dupree now.
Yeah, well, I'm getting tired of talking about Bud Dupree too. Let's flip to the offensive line though, and talk about the starting 5 there. I think it was Pat Kerwin and
Jim
the other guy?
Miller.
Jim Miller, right? Jim Miller talking about the Steelers' offensive line yesterday, kind of ranking them relative to the rest of the league. Both had them in the top 5. It was Kerwin, right? Put him number 1, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, Kerwin put him. Kerwin put the Steelers' offensive line number 1, and Jim Miller had them 4th overall on his list. I'm trying to figure out what I did with that post in the rankings. Here they are, and I'll read them. Let's see. Jim Miller had the Eagles, followed by the Cowboys, followed by the Saints, followed by the Steelers, followed by the Ravens. Kerwin had a lot of the same ones in his. He had the Steelers ranked 1, the Eagles ranked 2, the Cowboys ranked 3, the Colts he had ranked 4th, and the Saints he had ranked 5th. Now, the only differences of the teams in the top 5 was one had the Colts in Kerwin and one had the Ravens in Jim Miller there. Now, Jim Miller, obviously, to rank the Steelers up that high, thinks a lot of, but he thinks the loss of Hall of Fame coach Mike Munchak. Now you see, he goes on to note that they have the same play caller and have elevated within terms of their offensive line coach, so he likes that for the Steelers, and he still thinks that they're strong because Big Ben can do a lot of things and manage a lot of things. He does initially say that they're a little shaky at the right tackle spot. Hey, that's forgivable for him to say that, but within that, he goes on to list that because you think about the past 2 years, they've lost some good players in Chris Hubbard, and then they traded away Marcus Gilbert. Well, the thing is with Marcus Gilbert, how many games has Marcus Gilbert played the last 2 seasons? Especially
10.
Especially last season, and the 2 guys that you had fill in for Marcus Gilbert, Matt Filer and Chukwuma Okorafor, are both still with the team. So another year experience there. So look, nobody's going to rush out and put Matt Filer in the Pro Bowl or give him all Pro votes or anything like that. And obviously, Okorafor needed some help in that game against Denver. And, Von Miller's going to do that to a lot of guys, though, right? In that game. You would think with the pedigree that Okorafor has, and then, of course, we haven't even talked about Hawkins, who, we'll see if he's able to make the complete comeback there from that injury last year and all. But you got a lot of options over there, and it doesn't suck to be the Steelers when it comes to and then Derwin Gray is another one they drafted there. It doesn't suck to be the Steelers right now when it comes to continuity on the offensive line. I mean, B.J. Finney's back again. As well. I mean, you got a lot of pieces there that, they're another year older. And, we've talked how many times about Sean Serrett this offseason. Nobody's going to try to confuse him with Mike Munchak. Trust me. If you had your druthers, you'd want Mike Munchak still to be there. But, Sean Serrett is a guy that learned under Mike Munchak for several years. I just can't see things going all to crap just because Sean Serrett's in charge of that unit now instead of Munchak there. So overall, then basically when it got to Kerwin's turn with this, he says, they lost their coach, meaning Munchak, but they're on a mission that starts with this O-line. Earlier he goes, he points to last year they proved they can run the ball without Le'Veon Bell. They averaged 4.4 yards a carry and 7 touchdowns. Now people will say, boy, he's got his numbers mixed up there. And I think what one listener pointed out, what Kerwin's talked about throughout this offseason when it comes to the Steelers and the offensive line, is those 7 touchdowns are in division. Kerwin places a lot of emphasis on how the line has played in division there. Okay. So I think that's where he's getting these numbers from. He goes on to say they allowed 1 sack every 34 pass plays. They got enough depth here, and they got better depth than you think. So is it unreasonable, regardless of where you want to put them in 1 through 5, Alex? I mean, you would have to think that most people across the board, if they got any knowledge whatsoever, a good understanding of offensive lines around the league, they're going to place the Steelers in the top 5, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You want to put them at 1, cool. You want to put them at 4, I understand. I'm not going to fight you over wherever you put them in the top 5. I think they do belong in the top 5, and that's what matters to me. But yeah, I mean, I understand looking at the right tackle spot, saying, if there's a spot you want to talk about from an outside point of view, saying it's a little shaky there, right tackle is going to be where you're going to go. I mean, I get that. And I understand, obviously, losing Munchak is such the headline here. But as we've emphasized time and time again, I think you're going to have a very similar look and similar the coached room under Sean Serrett, and it's got to be pretty rare to be able to replace an offensive line coach in-house and to keep that continuity. I mean, that's uncommon, so I think that's a feather in the Steelers' cap.
One of the things, you go back and you look at Matt Filer and what he was able to accomplish last season. I went all the way back to the preseason. He never took a snap at tackle last year during the preseason.
Really?
He played guard, and he played a little bit at center there. So now look, he has taken some snaps in the past, but I mean for the most part, really he did not take a snap at all during the preseason at tackle. So for him to come in and be a multi position player like that and start as many games and perform as he did. Once again, nobody going to make a claim that Matt Filer should have gone to the Pro Bowl or anything. I think that speaks volumes about him, and he is a guy that, he might be a better guard than he is. I think he is. I think he is a better guard than he is a tackle.
It's a little Foster-like. Big dude, strong, tough to get around, versatile. Foster came in as a tackle guard, played tackle at Tennessee. I didn't realize Fowler didn't play a single snap at right tackle in the preseason. I know he did at camp, but obviously that's camp, not a game. So, that's so tough to do for linemen. I know we think, move from right guard to right tackle or left tackle to right tackle or whatever. It's easy to do. It's not. I mean, the footwork changes, the assignment changes. I mean, if you're backside, if you're front side, working with different guys, trying to develop chemistry, it's a lot to handle for anybody, especially Fowler, who played 4 different spots last year. He even played a little bit of center in some training camp practices. So that's a really high football IQ player, but also somebody that's super strong and, isn't the best athlete, but uses his size well to kind of get in the way. And obviously, once he gets his hands on you, game over. I
mean, you obviously don't want to get in a situation where he has to play left tackle for you, but he probably could. Mm-hmm. People will say, well, what does it matter? You still face, good edge rushers on either side in today's NFL, and that's true. But the whole footwork aspect, you go back to Flozell Adams several years ago when he was signed. Flozell, all of his career was a left tackle, and you have to learn that muscle memory aspect of playing on the right side, and that's so hard for a guy that's never played that position to do, and that would be the hardest aspect outside of just not being an elite tackle or upper echelon top 20, top 25 tackle as it is to play in that left side. But at least in Filer, you have a guy that push come to shove could probably play all 5 positions on your offensive line. And like I said, I think guard might be his best position, and here's to us hoping not to see any of that maybe outside of training camp and the preseason.
It's funny, though. I think he is kind of a natural left tackle because that's where he played at Bloomsburg way back when in college. So that's where he got his, football start. But he could play in there in an absolute emergency. But I think one of the biggest differences outside of he obviously hasn't played there in a while. He can play left tackle in camp last year. Have to kind of retrain himself there is that you don't have any help. On the right side, you do have help from tight ends chipping, forcing the alignment wide. Backs are going to be on that side more often. On left tackle, obviously, you're going to face a lot more one-on-one matchups where there's less margin for error. So that would be the issue with moving Filer to left tackle. He's not a great athlete.
Definitely a feather in the cap for Munchak to be able to get all the and Sarrett too. Obviously he's there too, but for a guy to do what Filer's been able to do, how was he originally signed? Do you remember?
I think Houston released him, and I don't know if the Steelers had a claim on him. I think they just signed him to their practice squad. So I forget exactly the logistics of it, but Houston had cut him, and the Steelers put him on the practice squad.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now, trying to remember how he originally came about to the roster.
Yeah, because he was with the Houston Texans as UDFA from Bloomsburg, which is D2 school in Pennsylvania, and then Pittsburgh signed him. But Munchak has Hubbard and Villanueva and Filer. There are a lot of success stories from those underdog guys, and that's a credit to the players themselves, but of course credit to the coaching.
Let's see here. Filer signed as an undrafted free agent by the Texans in 2014, waived by them at the end of August that year, re-signed to their practice squad, and then spent and then signed to he spent the entire 2014 season on the Texans practice squad. They signed him to a futures contract immediately after the 2014 season ended. He was waived by the Texans after the 2015 preseason, and then the Steelers signed him to their practice squad after he was waived by the Texans in 2015.
Okay, yeah, so there's a story there. And the strongest dude on that team, or at least the offensive line, but probably the entire team. You hear teammates talk about it. It's not DeCastro, it's not Villanueva, it's Matt Filer is the strongest offensive lineman they have.
He's a lock, right?
Yeah, I'll call him a lock.
Yeah, I think he is too. It's hard to imagine him not making this team with that position flexibility.
Absolutely. Hey, real quick with the offensive line. I might touch on this later on, but can we see a trade along the offensive line? Because you got Filer, you have a core four. Those two guys are gonna make it. Then you got Hawkins. I mean, he could play well. When Hawkins played his rookie season, he played well. Could he be a potential trade candidate if you go in camp and you're feeling good about the group that you have?
Say again?
With Gerald Hawkins, could he be traded as a late camp thing where they traded Ross Cockrell and Sammy Coates and guys like that? If Filer or Core 4 do well and you have good depth there and there isn't a spot there for Hawkins, could you see him being a guy that could be on the move for a 6th, 7th round pick?
I suppose it's possible, but he would have to, I mean, his tape in preseason would have to be there.
Oh, sure. I mean, he's got to play well, but he's played well when he's been healthy. Unfortunately, the health's been very fleeting. But I remember back to his rookie year, those first, he didn't get into a game because he got hurt with that shoulder injury, but those first whatever camp practices he participated in, the dude played really well, and you felt like, wow, you might have something there. And things have been bumpy since, but I think when he plays, he's going to have good tape.
Is that a guy that would interest maybe Munchak in Denver?
I mean, everyone's needs offensive line help. I mean, even especially when injury strikes, someone's probably going to want to tackle.
Yeah. Look, it's one of the things. Here's the thing that's a tough injury that he's coming back off of too.
Yeah, I mean, of course he's got to show that. And was that a quad? He had torn quad.
Yes.
But the dude's had a really good attitude. I know that only means so much, but I mean, after the injury, saw him at camp last year. I've seen him on the sidelines of almost every game. Dude always has a smile on his face. He's always interacting. So I think, obviously, it's been very tough with the injuries, but I think he's got the best attitude possible to try to be able to overcome those things.
He's still a guy I'd like to see maybe try to get some snaps inside. I doubt we are now at this point. I think we would have seen it, But I think it'd be interesting to see him playing the phone booth there on the left side.
Well, I guess it's possible. I mean, I know we haven't seen it yet, but we've barely had the chance to see him play to have that possibility of him moving around. So if it happens, I'm not going to report it though because I don't need to hear about it for the next 4 months from Dave Ryan.
I'd like to hear it. I've been a realist of this since day one. But I mean, Todd Haley was the one that originally brought it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's in the cards, and maybe something with the injury changes it, or they just want to give him a different look. I mean, who knows? But I'm just saying. I mean, you got Duran Gray, you got Zach Banner, you got Hawkins. Obviously, I don't. Gray and Banner aren't going to really have trade value, but I mean, Hawkins is kind of maybe the odd man out, or they feel like Gray and Banner and Hawkins are kind of the same dude, and you feel like you can get a draft pick for Hawkins. Let's say you trade a 6th round pick to get a tight end or a safety. You want to recoup that pick for next year. I could see Hawkins as maybe being a good trade candidate to some offensive line needy team, which is most of the league right now.
Banner's got some pedigree to him too. We just haven't seen much
does
of him.
Does he have pedigree or just the Browns being the Browns and taking a guy way too high in the 4th round?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying where his draft was, and look, I mean, Steelers saw enough on him to not only bring him in but keep him on the 53.
Yeah, but no one saw enough to bring him in until like August 15th or whatever he got signed on. Like he was out there for a while before someone picked him up.
Yeah, he's still stuck though. I mean, he had to lose that weight.
He's stuck. Yeah, I mean,
I think a lot of that, he had to lose that weight and all too, right? Maybe he finally got his mind right of whether or not he decided he wanted to compete, and not just play off of that USC pedigree and all, So
yeah, good for him. But I mean, I don't know if the pedigree matters because no one was touching him until Pittsburgh came calling. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could throw if he really surprises. I mean, they don't come much bigger than Zach Banner.
I mean, he's a guy that assuming he sticks all the way through. I mean, he's going to see quite a few snaps. You would think during the preseason and all.
Mm-hmm. Who's bigger, Banner or Villanueva?
Well, they're both big boys.
I think Banner has to weigh more. I think Villanueva might be an inch or so taller. Let's get them walking through the doorway.
How are they? Boy, how would you like to have them at bodyguards?
Right.
Villanueva's listed at 320. Not that means anything. Banner's listed at 360. I think he's got to be down from that. I mean, weren't they talking about him losing?
I'd have to look. He's got to weigh more than Villanueva though. Just looking at the body types.
Yeah, I think so.
But I think they're about this. I think Villanueva's 6'9", Banner's 6'7", 6'8".
Hey, how great would it be to trade a tackle for maybe a number 2 tight end?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be like that. I mean, player-for-player trades are pretty uncommon, especially to rostered players. But if you could really finagle things, let's say you send a 6th round. Let's say you send a 7th round pick to Detroit for Michael Roberts, a tight end up there from Toledo, and then you send Hawkins to the Giants for a 6th-round pick. I mean, you kind of do multiple deals to trade away a pick, then you get a pick back. It's kind of my thinking.
All right. Needless to say, they got a lot of capable guys on that depth chart right now.
Yeah, I mean, I said this before. I think there's 13 guys you can make a case for making the 53-man roster, from the starters to some of the undrafted guys like Fred Johnson and Garrett Brumfield that have gotten a little bit of buzz during the spring practice sessions. So really good depth to have, even though you trade away Marcus Gilbert and things like that. But the depth is still strong, and the coaching, I think, is going to be, well off.
Derwin Gray's going to be interesting to watch, one to watch too. You would think right now he's slated for a practice squad spot.
Yeah, that would be his best chance, but, I'm not going to go with any expectations. We'll see how the guy does. He's getting cross-trained at 4 different positions right now. That's going to be good for his value, but practice squad is certainly more likely than 53 right now.
All right, what direction now?
I think that was most of the topics we had to cover, Dave. If there was anything else you wanted to throw out there, we can get to some reader emails here.
I'm trying to think, was there anything else that we wanted to cover here?
Yeah, nothing on my list. That's just to wrap up the offensive line of Core 4. I think you wrote about it, lost 10 to 12 pounds this offseason, so a little slimmer version of Chuck Wumo Core 4, which again I think is very common for year 1 to year 2 players. Then when you're going to be in better condition, better shape, lose some weight, get a little more athletic. So I think that's pretty common for most of these guys.
All right, boy, we'll have plenty to talk about on the Friday show, won't we?
Oh yes, we will. Strap in for that one.
All right, let's go straight to the email machine here, and this one's from Bryce. Hey guys, this is Bryce. Keep up the good work. I got 2 questions for both of you. As the roster stands right now, what backup safety do you believe has the best chance to have the biggest impact on the upcoming season, and why do you believe what you believe? Well, I think we kind of covered that earlier in the show, Bryce. It'd probably be Marcus Allen.
If we're considering him the backup, I mean, if you consider him a starter in the linebacker spot, then, I know I'm getting kind of into semantics. But yeah, if Marcus Allen counts, then him. If not, then Dangerfield for being the backup free safety, probably going to play at some point, and then the special teams value that he has.
It's funny. We'll talk about these guys now and then. It's amazing how even from this point forward the roster can shift.
Yep.
Time and time again. In fact, after this mandatory minicamp ends sometime between now and the next 5 weeks, I'm sure we'll do another 53-man roster prediction. At least my last 53-man roster prediction, I think all the guys are still on the roster.
little jab at me.
All
right.
Nah.
I'm gonna grow a blonde mustache.
Did you put?
Yeah, I had Tocho on there.
But did you put?
I'm dumb.
Instead of Dangerfield?
No, I had Dangerfield on there. You had Dangerfield off of it.
Right, I had Dangerfield, I think,
I yelled
off
at you
of
about that.
Right.
Yeah, no, I just had him keeping 5 safeties and Tocho being the 5th guy.
But it's all, that's the fun part of this exercise. You go back and you look at what you put after the draft, and then you fast forward to how the ultimate thing ends up. It just goes to show you, injuries. A lot of different things can shape this thing in a hurry. Bryce, part 2 of Bryce's email. When I watch the offensive line, it seems like Finney is a much better guard than backup center, even though Pouncey is signed for a few more years. When do you believe the Steelers should start addressing the center position and find a guy they're going to groom for the future, i.e. like Finney with Ramon Foster? I agree, and I've stated this for quite a while. Finney, to me, is a much better guard than center, but in his defense, at least when it comes to games, we haven't seen him a lot at center.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, he just hasn't played there.
But his preseason time at center hasn't been all that, overly positive. Comfort providing, if you will, in that area. Maybe this is a year where he puts it all together there. And look, he predominantly, I think, played center at Kansas State, so you would kind of think that would maybe be his top position there. But yeah, look, this guy's giving you some great snaps, most of them being against the Kansas City Chiefs, at both guard spots too. So you take comfort in a guy that can give you that kind of play. Whereas on the flip side, you go back to Doug Legursky, and I think you and I have had this argument before. Doug Legursky was a better center than he was guard. But at least Legursky could give you some snaps at that guard position there. I think it's pound for pound, player for player, I would take Finney over Legursky.
Oh yeah, I mean you're crazy if you're taking Legursky over Finney, in my opinion at least. I mean I like Legursky, the throwback mentality, but Finney's just better. I mean I just hasn't played a lot of center in the NFL, so I mean yeah he was a center at Kansas State. So I don't think it's not like it's a new position for him, and it's pretty rare to see a guy that plays guard well and struggles at center. Sometimes you'll see center struggle the farther they go out, fan out at guard. I could understand that, but I really can't give you a good reason why the guy might struggle more at center than at guard unless he's a snapping issue or a communication issue. But those aren't problems for BJ Finney. So I think if he just got more reps at the pivot, then you would see the same Finney you do at guard.
And you should see a whole heck of that, you would think, this year.
Yeah.
During training camp, obviously.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean,
training camp and preseason.
How many preseason snaps did he get at center last year? Because he gets bounced between guard and center. He got some, I'm sure, but I'm curious what the number is because I don't know what the number would have been. It's 100, 200.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look on that as well. The biggest question with Finney right now is can they get him signed between now and the start of the season to a longer contract? You would think that's going to be the goal. You would think that's going to be the end. The end all do all by the time the dust settles, by the time the first game rolls around, is that Finney will have a long-term deal. Is he the heir apparent to Ramon Foster? Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, if I'm Finney, I'm not signing a deal because I know it's going to be for way under what I could hit on the market, especially if there's an injury and I play a lot and play well. I'm looking at what happened to Chris Hubbard. Marcus Gilbert goes down, Hubbard steps in, gets paid out in Cleveland. I'm Finney. Unless they blow me away with an offer, which I'm sure they're not going to do, I'm playing this year out.
Yep, absolutely. All right, good questions there, Bryce. And let's move along here to what else do we have here? Thought I saw a few more other ones in here. Okay, here's the interesting from Sam Shriver. Dear Dave and Alex, with the likelihood of a lockout and the possibility of losing games for the 2021 season, how will this potentially impact Ben's final year of his contract? If the 2021 season ends up getting shortened significantly, is it possible that Ben's contract year tolls into the 2022 season? If any games take place in 2021, yeah, I don't think it would toll. Man, it's been so long since I've read about contracts and a potential lost season, and it's one of those things I have to go back and look at. Does anybody even know the answer to this right now, or do we have to wait to see how contract tolling works under the new CBA? It wouldn't. You would think there's stipulations in this year's CBA as far as to what would happen to contracts if a complete season was lost. Let me get a hold of Joe Corey about that, and I think I know the answer to this, the correct one, but that's not going to be good enough in this situation, so I don't want to put anything out there that I think might be right and it be wrong. So I'll double check with Joe Corey over the course of the next several weeks, Sam, and I'll get you an answer on that. But you would think. And even if the players don't, if a lockout costs a full season, obviously the players aren't getting paid. Now, would they owe a year of service to the team or not? Yeah, that's a good question. I think I used to know the answer to that, but I think I filed that back in the area that I don't use much.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they would toll. I mean, would all player contracts toll? The only way I could see that happen is if you miss the entire season. But if they play half a season, then I can't see them tolling.
Yeah, I can't either. Like I said, I don't want to give out the wrong information here, so let me get with Joe Corey on that. Caleb Winterburn writes in, "Hi, guys. Love the podcast. Continue the awesome work. Couple of questions. Would you ever consider doing some live Twitter shows? I think the listeners would love to get reactions during the games and the draft from the two of you or others from the Steelers Depot team. The thing is, if we do that, it takes away from our coverage on site. And boy, things move so fast paced for us during games and during game days and the draft and all like that, I think we can still get our thoughts across quickly via the site or via podcast or something like that, I don't see where other than satisfying the instant reaction crave for some people, I think we do a better job covering it more thoroughly than not doing it live. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, maybe it's something we could try, or I could try at some point. But I get distracted enough during the game with Twitter
I
and
do
the
too.
site
I
and
do too.
all that. So I mean, if I had something else, I might end up not watching the game by mistake. So I want to make sure I'm getting to watch the game and have something good, valuable to say. Post game podcast, articles, all that stuff.
All right, number 2. We know that the Steelers know they have a tight end depth problem. Do you think they still can make a trade for one later this offseason? What are the potential tight end targets around the league? I know one that's not a target is Kyle Rudolph. He just
Yep.
at least the one good thing about Kyle Rudolph signing that big contract with the Vikings is that he's not going to go to the Patriots now. So there's that. Not sure if you can answer that one off the top of your head, but I think many fans are curious about this subject. Yeah, you're right. They've acknowledged they have a tight end depth problem. If they didn't, they wouldn't have put in a claim probably for Jordan Leggett a few weeks ago there. Could they still make a trade for one later this offseason? I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule it out at all. I was just looking at this the other day, and a name maybe to keep an eye on. I don't know if you've mentioned him in the past, Alex. Richard Rodgers.
Where's he at? In Green Bay still?
Where is he? Philly, right?
Is he with the Eagles now? Okay, I could buy it. He was in Green Bay. I lost track of him after that when they had a tight end shuffle there.
When you look at the Eagles depth chart top to bottom, he kind of seems like he might be. Who do they have over there?
They got Ertz. They got Dallas Goedert.
Right. Those two alone, those two are going to be your top two, right?
Sure.
So
yeah, I could see it. Yeah, that makes sense. Is he definitely in Philadelphia?
I believe so. Hold on here real quick. I was just looking at this the other day.
Yeah, I mean that's a good name to throw out there. I mean, I mentioned Michael Roberts. I mentioned Jason Kroom in Buffalo. I know there's been injuries to Croft, and Kroom got hurt during spring practice. I'm not sure what the extent is there, but yeah, Rodgers is a new name. I like throwing out there.
I don't think he has any history, pre-draft visits or that kind of stuff with the Steelers there. Yeah, he's currently with the Eagles right now. In his contract, look, I mean, it wouldn't. He was given a $300,000 signing bonus. $200,000 of his $805,000 base salary in 2019 is fully guaranteed. So, in other words, for the Eagles to trade him right now, they would eat $150,000 in dead money this year, $150,000 in dead money in 2020. That's very easy to swallow, and if the Steelers traded for him, they would obviously probably have no problem guaranteeing, or absorbing the $200,000 of the $800,000 he's due in base salary. He is signed through the 2020 season, so at least that gives you a guy that if you thought could stick on your 53 not only this year, you'd have him back at least competing for his spot again in 2020 because he's under contract there. Memory serves me, he's okay kind of blocking tight end, a guy that can give you some stuff on special teams, and a guy that's caught a few passes in the NFL as well too.
And they've traded with Philadelphia before. Pretty common stuff there. So, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense across the board. I like that suggestion.
Now, he was the only one that came to mind. Is there anybody else that comes to mind with you?
Just the names I mentioned before. Michael Roberts up in Detroit, Jason Kroom up in Buffalo. Those are, I mean, maybe one of the other Jets tight ends if those guys get cut, and Eric Tomlinson, someone like that. But it was kind of the guy I thought they would go after, and obviously they tried and it didn't work out.
Okay, let's see. What else do we have here?
Real quick, Dave, mandatory minicamp quotes coming in. David DeCastro is at mandatory minicamp. He's talking to the media today. Ben's got some quotes out already, so DeCastro is in attendance.
All right, this one from Nate Contra. Hi, Dave and Alex. I only follow the Steelers, so I was wondering how the talk or lack thereof surrounding Mason Rudolph compares to other quarterbacks drafted as heir apparents after year one, i.e. Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo, Patrick Mahomes. Like you stated in a recent podcast, everyone seems to forget that the Steelers drafted Rudolph. I don't think it's so much that everybody forgets that they drafted him. I just think that because he was number 3, and what all transpired last year, there's just not as much talk about him There will be, look, there's going to be a lot to talk about him from this point of the offseason, and really there already has, going back to last week of OTAs and some of the comments that he made. Is it common for there to be lack of conversation or hype around a quarterback sitting behind a franchise quarterback after the first year, or is this a bad sign? Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question, Nate. Other than saying it is what it is. Joshua Dobbs winning that number 2 spot last year, making Landry Jones expendable. You would obviously think that a guy in Mason Rudolph they were going to bring along slow anyway. Not a huge surprise. He was probably going to be number 3 either way last year. So I don't know. Do you get what Nate's kind of getting at here, Alex?
I'm not sure what he means by hype. What are you looking for hype right now? We're in spring sessions right now. Things will heat up when camp starts. Once we actually get some tape out there and can watch these guys in practice, it'll be a really fierce battle, I think. So there'll be hype when the time comes.
The thing that we don't want to happen, Nate, is where we're having the conversations like, oh man, Mason just not making any kind of jump. He's not driving one thing that stuck out to me going back through his preseason tape the other day when I went through it is ball velocity. And normally those things are things that you don't that are kind of hard to pick up on. But I just got through watching. I don't know who I was watching. Was it? Maybe it was Patrick Mahomes or something like that. Just the velocity, You want and Rudolph's obviously done some work during the offseason as all quarterbacks do. You hope to see him be able to drive the football a little bit better down the field, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's some technical stuff. Usually that is weight transfer and things like that, and just being comfortable with what you see. And if you're a little hesitant, then maybe you don't drive the football the same way. But yeah, I just want to see consistency, taking care of the football. Those are the pillars of the quarterback position, and if you see that, then he'll have a good chance to beat Dobbs out.
Like I said, Nate, in the last show or the show before that, I'm going to be curled up in the corner crying if he's not able to win, the number 2 spot this year, because that means, man, why the heck did you burn that 3rd round draft pick when you could have used it on, all the stuff that goes back to things that were written and said about, drafting a quarterback a year after you're drafting Joshua Dobbs and especially one that high there. So
what if Dobbs plays really well this preseason though? 3rd-year guy.
I thought they should have traded him last year. I thought maybe you could have seen the situation because I think at the time, and I think I even wrote this at the time too. Man, the Panthers were in the need of a decent backup quarterback at that time. And
Dobbs torched him in that last
right.
Season,
and I was thinking maybe, man, maybe that's a guy that you could potentially trade away at that point. But obviously that didn't happen. He ended up getting the number 2 spot and all like that. So could you? The thing is do you have a number 3? Do you have a number 3 that you have trust in, and can you get the kind of return that would make it worth your while for Joshua Dobbs?
Yeah, the first answer to your question is no. There is no number 3 right now, the way there was last year, and the second question is to be determined. But it's harder to see a trade this year than last year. Quarterbacks, you just want to if you have good quarterbacks, you just want to hold on to those guys.
And obviously, I don't think it's going to happen.
But to the question, what if Dobbs plays really well this preseason? And let's assume there's no trade. Could it be that Rudolph does play well and takes a jump, but Dobbs just takes another jump and really just kind of puts it all together, and you feel like, we're just going to roll with Dobbs for now and see what he can do and make a change in season. Maybe that happens, but, Dobbs has kept that spot and they're in that spot.
However good Dobbs plays, you would hope that Rudolph plays better.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Good problem to have.
The end-all, do-all is a great problem to have, all that aside. But, at this point, we know who Dobbs is, right?
I don't want to say. I don't want to say that. Can he get better? Yeah. I kind of have a general idea what Dobbs is, but maybe there's another jump for him to make as well. Quarterbacks can do that.
Look, if both those guys improved, good problem to have. Yeah, because you're one snap away. So I just think at least by the bye week, you would expect Rudolph to have that number 2 spot. I'll give him I won't get violently upset until we've reached the bye week. Because that's normally the week that they try to carve out more time for the backups and all like that in practice, and that's when whoever's been number 3 gets more time up into that point. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't really think that there's been any kind of lack of talk or hype or whatever about Rudolph, Nate, overall.
Yeah, I don't think either. And any lack of hype is just because this isn't a starting job. It's not one that's going to immediately impact, obviously an injury could change things, but out of the gate, it's not going to immediately impact the 2019 Steelers. So we're talking about receivers and corners and who's going to play right away, because those are the highest priority positions to look at and the biggest battles to watch.
Here's a good one, and you know more about him from, so I'll let you handle this one from Mark Lone. What do you think about Casey Sells and his chance to make the team? I do have some semi-thoughts on this, but I know you know a little bit more about Casey than I do. What do you think about Casey Sells and his chance to make the team as a reserve defensive lineman? I look forward to seeing the kid in training camp in some preseason games. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I mean, obviously coming around his second time in NFL camp, maybe even his third time, because he was with the Rams, I think, before Pittsburgh signed him as UDFA out of Ohio. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I mean, we kind of assume Isaiah Buggs is going to have that spot as the 6th and final defensive lineman on the 53, but Buggs has to prove it. He's not going to be given anything as a 6th-round pick, or like most rookies, you got to earn that spot. So, but Sales, I mean, I see a very low ceiling with him. He's got some decent strength. He can stuff the run. He's not offering a lot as a pass rusher, though. He's a marginal athlete. I think Buggs is going to have better hand use, a better pass rush arsenal and plan overall. But if there's an injury there, then Sales could be maybe a next man up, reserve kind of guy. So, we'll see how he looks the second time around in Latrobe.
Is Alualu a lock?
Yeah, I'll call Alualu a lock.
I'll take 96%. I don't want to put myself into that big, because look, I mean, I like Tyson Alualu. You know what you're going to get from him, but he's still not a premier, player there. Can he be forced off the roster? Well, what percent chance is there that he's forced off the roster? You think 0?
Yeah, I mean, very statistically insignificant. If there was some extra depth on this team, maybe, but who's going to force him off the roster?
Yeah,
because even if Buggs plays well, that doesn't force Lulu off the roster.
Yeah, what about Levon Hooks?
I like Levon Hooks. I like the story. The dude's been a fighter. He's been a practice squad lifer. I mean, hats off to him for that grind. But no. I mean, I thought a couple years ago was his best chance when he was fighting like Johnny Maxey for a spot, and he didn't make it then. If he hasn't done it by now, I mean, he's been in this team for like 3-4 years. Generally not gonna change quickly.
All right, I think we've got through most of them here, Alex. So right at a little bit over an hour or an hour and a half here. So right on time here. Okay, until Friday, we'll have a lot more, hopefully fresher stuff to talk about with the coaches all talking about players during mandatory minicamp. Mike Tomlin, I think, is supposed to meet the media each of the next 3 days here. So a lot of fresher topics, I think, on Friday. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to support the show, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button, upper right navigational bar. If you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to the site and hit the ad-free portion or button, upper right navigational bar as well. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.